We are back here, the Tom and Dee Show. And of course, people who have listened to this podcast before know that you and I went to college at Indiana together. Indiana
That's
University.
right. And you would never know that with your...
Yeah, if you're watching on YouTube, you will see that I'm wearing my proud Indiana sweatshirt, my nice new one, which, by the way, you had a T-shirt that you said you were going to give me, which I never got from you. It was a brand new IU T-shirt.
I know. I actually like it too much. So, sorry. You're not getting it.
Yeah, I figured.
Tom and Dee.
Two middle-aged idiots.
But you're going to be moving to Bloomington eventually. So, you can just get one from the IU bookstore. But speaking of which, what's the latest with the house?
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Got a contract signed this morning.
No.
Yes.
When do you close?
I close. Well, this podcast it'll probably already close by then because we record a few in advance in case one of us goes on a 2-week bender. But yeah, the closing date will be the 10th of June. And
nice.
I'm actually going out next week to Bloomington for 4 nights, and I'm going to look at houses with my realtor, and it'll be fun.
Congratulations on the house, buddy.
Thank you. And as we record this podcast today, it's my mom's birthday. So, and she was on a couple episodes.
Yeah,
she was on a couple episodes before too. Well, so you asked me to bring on a guest, and I would love to tell you a little bit about him. He's actually my stepbrother, and I'm so lucky because, I grew up an only child, and I have a half and a step or half siblings that I'm not real close with. But Chris comes into town to visit, his dad and my mom a couple times a year. And I've been, gone out there to visit him in San Francisco and stuff. But he recently did something which was quite amazing. I don't know if you've heard of the World Marathon Challenge, but he ran 7 marathons in 7 days on 7 continents. And
wait, 7 marathons, 7 days, 7 continents?
Yeah, let's bring him in and find out about it. Chris Edell,
oh my God,
our guest.
That is crazy.
What's up, buddy?
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Good. How are you?
It's awesome to be on the podcast. Yeah, doing well. This is great. It's really cool to see you, Tom, and see this podcast and everything going on, and just really excited to be on the show today.
So
we're excited to have you.
We're going to obviously be talking a lot about your accomplishment and some other things as well. But how many days did it take for you to start feeling somewhat back to normal, catching up from jet lag, exhaustion, mental exhaustion? I mean, how long until you felt like I woke up today and I feel like I'm back to normal?
It's interesting. Like, even though it's a couple months since I did the challenge, there's aspects of my legs that are still sore from that specific race. I think the mental aspect of it probably only took a couple of days to really recover. But
no injuries then? No IT band tears or nothing?
No injuries, but there were injuries on the training leading up to it. But it's pretty remarkable what the human body can do. But that race really just took, I guess, my capability just to a level that was far beyond what the body was ever, trained to do, because you can never really train up to that level. You have to sort of go to a certain threshold and just make a full jump.
That's amazing.
I have this friend at my health club. She's one of those, long distance, 100-mile, 200-mile runners. And she says once you're so far into it, it's almost like you're on an acid trip or a mushroom trip where you're just, where seriously, it's like that high kind of comes in where she's like, literally, she starts almost seeing things, I mean, did you feel that at some point during these 7 days? Where
but he actually was on an acid trip. Difference.
I say less like an acid trip, more like an ayahuasca experience. I mean, you definitely get like a very spiritual high from going out for so long, and your mind starts playing tricks on you, and you start having this dialogue with your inner voice to sort of test your own capabilities, and you're really by yourself, and you're really kind of in your own thoughts, as well as going through a lot of physical pain through the process. So it very much has elements of kind of a psychedelic trip in a way. But like I say that you don't necessarily chase that experience, but it is a component when you're doing some pretty.
Go ahead.
I'm sure you've been asked this question a million times, but simply put, why?
Did you lose a bet, Chris?
was there a big purse at the end, or the fame and fortune? What drove you to do this?
It's a great question, and I think it's different for every person that's involved. I think um, when people decide to do something of this nature, there's this desire to prove themselves in some sort of capacity, or there's this desire to overcome something. And that could be very different. So when I was meeting runners, I mean, there were folks that were overcoming addiction, or they, went through a divorce, or, they were going through a big career change. And I think for me, it was the fact that I hit 45 years old and I sort of hit this thought where I was like, wow, I'm not so sure if I could even do anything of this, in 10 years from now. So now is the time where if I want to really throw myself into some crazy physical challenge, this is really kind of the capstone age where I got to basically push this before the time runs out. So I think that was kind of what's going on in my head.
You were talking about, being alone in your thoughts, for a lot of this. Was there ever a time where you had another racer that you were kind of, or were you guys all spread out like a, mile, 3 minutes, 5 minutes apart, 10 minutes, or were there some times where you kind of picked someone that you said, we're about the same pace. Let's kind of, cheer each other on.
Yeah, that's another great question. I went into this challenge, like I was with 63 other runners, I believe, that participated in this thing. And each of us came from a different part of the world. And, we didn't really have, I would say, like the goal of necessarily meeting people on this race. I mean, we knew that would be an aspect of it, but it was a very individualized experience. Like, this is me versus this 183-mile run. Um, but you find that when you sort of are going through mutual suffering, that's actually when the real friendships develop, just like in any other situation, whether it's a work situation or some, crazy situation. That's when the real bonding happens. So I found myself oftentimes running at a similar pace to someone else. And then at that moment, you'd strike up a conversation, and the conversation starts going very deep very quickly, really wanting to get to know them. So it's this very sort of hyper concentrated, intense experience where you really get to know someone in a very short period of time. And there's actually been a few very, I would say, close friendships, and we only knew each other for a week, but like there's this feeling that, oh yeah, if I ever visit them in this city, that's the first person I'd call up, and there'd be an instant bonding over, the
So you will
experience that we went
definitely
through.
see some of these people again in your lifetime, probably.
100%. I mean, I've already kept in touch through Zoom with a couple of them, and it's interesting because since we all were sort of self-selected to basically do this challenge, I think we all had different intentions for going into it, and I think we bond over those intentions because it's a crazy concept to do something of this nature. So there's a shared sort of camaraderie around that
Well, I
overall.
could probably guess the 7 continents that you raced on, but um, uh,
Just a little bit
diving
of
in a
the
little
agenda.
closer, what were the countries or cities that you went to? What was it pretty localized? I mean, I don't know how that would be, but I also don't
Yes.
quite I can't picture the logistics of getting from one place to the next to be able to race in time. That's crazy.
Yeah, yeah. So we had an orientation in Cape Town, South Africa. That was sort of like ground zero for us to get started. From there, we took a chartered flight down to Antarctica, which was about 5.5, 6 hours, and it was by no means a luxury plane. I mean, we were basically on like some old school Russian military jet. Um,
No.
it was meant primarily for like transporting cargo. Um, Basically went right to Antarctica, immediately did the 26.2 miles there, had dinner there, and then immediately flew back to Cape Town and did race number two. So basically did 2 marathons in 24 hours across two extreme climate temperature differences in
Yeah,
Antarctica.
what was that, like sub-zero to 70, 90 degrees? Like what was that?
Yeah, it was, if I could recall, I don't know if this is the exact number, but it's within a few degrees. It was about 7 degrees in Antarctica with like a negative 10 wind chill.
Wow.
And then Cape Town, there was actually a heat wave because it's the dead of summer because we did it in January in the southern hemisphere. It was probably getting up to like high 80s
Yeah.
Fahrenheit, but like high level humidity, direct sunlight, not a lot of shade. But doing that in 24 hours with zero sleep in between, because the plane was just such a rough ride, that was intense in its own right.
Oh my God, right. And then
Yeah.
and
Cape
I'm
Town.
guessing you had to protect your eyes too and face and everything
Oh yeah,
because of
tell them that
the
story, Chris.
snow and
What the pilot
reflectiveness and
said. The pilot said something before you guys got off the plane that I heard you tell me.
Yeah, and you're totally right. It was the reflectiveness of the snow, and I never experienced anything like it. But because it's just blinding white down there, the sky as well as the snow. But the sun is also very intense because there's like a very thin ozone layer there. We were required to wear either glasses or goggles because we could actually burn our retinas
yeah.
if we basically like had our, didn't have any sun protection or eye protection down there. So we had to wear that the entire time we were down there, which
Oh
was,
my God.
pretty fascinating. But
Right. And then the
yeah,
terrain, was it like what did you run on for that distance? Was
it was basically like snow and ice pack. But they had it was a scientific base, so they actually had these groomer machines that created traction on the ice overall, and they carved out a track that was about I think about 2.5 miles long. So we ended up doing loops. But honestly, like this part of Antarctica was called Deep Field Antarctica. It's not the touristy part where the cruise ships pull up to the penguins or nothing. Like we were in the middle of nowhere. I mean, it was just completely desolate. I mean, it felt like you were just on Mars, but like white color. I mean, just a lunar landscape.
wow.
So
Wow.
that was pretty wild. I mean,
That's
definitely a
crazy.
once in a lifetime experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then from South Africa, that was your second destination. You went
South
to
Africa, we went to Perth, Western Australia with a layover in Mauritius. So we, kind of cut across like the Southern Hemisphere over to Perth,
So you had a
did a
layover in
marathon there.
Mauritius. Did you visit your sister's wedding site? Didn't Heather, didn't Heather get married there?
I actually wish I did, Tom, but we weren't actually even allowed off the plane.
Oh
Like we
wow.
just had to basically just sit there and refuel the plane. Yeah, so we could only see like the mountains there, like these gorgeous mountains from like our airplane window while we were just sitting there, which is kind of a bummer. But we arrived in Perth and we arrived at Perth at nighttime. So we ended up basically doing like a middle of the night marathon
oh my
in
God.
Perth. But Perth had this, what was crazy about Perth was the weeks leading up to the Perth race, I had my iPhone checking the weather in all these places. Perth was going through an extreme heat wave, up until that marathon where the daytime temperatures were hitting like 105 degrees. And Perth also has a very high humidity quotient there too. So I was on a WhatsApp chat with all these runners that I never met before that we were all saying like, oh man, this Perth, leg is probably going to be more hardcore than the Antarctica portion.
Oh my
So,
God.
but fortunately, we arrived at nighttime and did the race like in the middle of the night, so the temperatures dropped to the 80s, which is still a really hot, marathon. But at least it wasn't, in the 90s or 100 degrees, which would be unbearable to do a marathon.
Oh my God.
Okay, so
Yeah.
then from Perth, you went to up into Asia. Didn't you go to somewhere in the Middle East?
So yeah, this technically qualifies as Asia, but we flew to Dubai and did a
Okay.
marathon there. And Dubai, like since it's the winter time now, because now we're hitting back up into the kind of more like northern hemisphere. Um, the weather there was like absolutely perfect. I mean, it was like in the 60s or like low 70s, just very
Nice.
pleasant
Right.
overall. And then from Dubai, we flew to Madrid, and Madrid was actually the wintertime up there now. So Madrid had the same climate as San Francisco, kind of like
Hmm.
cool, a little on the cold side. But for me, that was like, I think my best race just because it was just an identical temperature to, what I
Yeah.
trained in overall. Then from Madrid, we went to a city that I never even heard of until I signed up for the race called Fortaleza, Brazil, which is in like the
Brazil. Right, right.
northeast corner of Brazil, like right by French Guiana, and like the country's kind of up in that like area there, which is really just like east of the Amazon. So if you can kind of picture southern hemisphere again, just oppressive humidity,
You went
summertime,
right.
just brutal, brutal.
Oh my
That
God.
was my hardest race by far because I'm just
Yeah.
not very good in the heat. It's just not my thing. And then we completed our final race in Miami, Florida. We arrived at like 10 o'clock at night, did the race in the middle of the night, starting at like midnight or 1 in the morning, and then finishing around like 5
Wow.
or so. And then that was the end of
That's
the experience.
that's crazy. So in between, how and during, like, how are you dealing with, the sleep, making sure you're stretched and physically on top of things, hydrated, your nutrition? I mean, I'm sure you probably had to have things catered and, eating perfectly so that, you have the right sort of energy. Am I wrong?
Yeah. Um, both right and wrong. So like, so like, I think like part of the challenge is actually like the deprivation that you experience from all the things that you mentioned. So it's about training your body to handle those components. So we knew that there was going to be a sleep deprivation component. You're sleeping on the plane. Fortunately, we had lie down seats, so it's not like you're cramped like in a coach thing. I think that would have been
Yeah.
simply impossible um, to accomplish. But in terms of like the diet and stuff like that, that was actually one of the hardest things because they did provide meals on the plane, but they were really not much larger than your typical sort of airline food. But when you're burning,
Yeah, you
th-
need the
3 to
calories.
5,000 plus calories on a race, along with just your normal 2,000 plus a day, you look for food wherever you could find it. So for me, I was very concerned about like getting food poisoning or having like a GI situation. So I just ended up basically going to like McDonald's at like every location or, just food that I could trust where, just
Yeah.
get the calories in, what's necessary to get through the race. Not necessarily focusing on healthy food, just focusing on food that I knew that, I wouldn't get sick on.
You mentioned
Right.
chicken nuggets were kind of the
Yeah, and this is a good time to
Yeah.
pause for our sponsor. This podcast is sponsored by McDonald's. All right, continue, please.
Right. Yeah. So
Right.
there was like the McDonald's thing, and then yeah, for the sleep deprivation. I mean, fortunately, we could sleep a bit on the plane, but that's part of the challenge. The stretching component. I have like these compression devices that allow me to compress my legs, and I had like a Theragun, which can massage your feet and stuff like that. And they had medics on the plane that were, helping with like blisters and various other things. Um, but yeah, it's a very Spartan, I would say, in many ways. Like it's well, actually, I wouldn't call it Spartan, but it was very comprehensive. But at the same time, it's not supposed to be a comfortable experience. It's really like
Yeah.
testing your body to the limits.
To me, it
Yeah.
almost seems like a Walter Mitty like experience instead of a Spartan experience. Right? Going all
Yeah.
the
committee.
places, just being outside of yourself, and kind of spiritual
Yeah.
too, like you said.
Yeah, I mean, because it's such a psychological test, but at the same time, you're in all these like amazing places that are truly once in a lifetime experiences. I've never been to Africa before this trip, of course, never in Antarctica. So to basically run in Cape Town and see Table Mountain and just think like, wow, this is just so incredible, being 45 and having just this experience, and then you're bonding with like the runners and the organizers of the event were just incredible. I mean, just like the most supportive, just wonderful people. And
Wow.
yeah, I mean, it was just awesome on many
But it
levels.
also it wasn't cheap. I mean, this isn't something that just an entry fee to a marathon might be like $75 and they give you a t-shirt, it's like there
Well,
was a
yeah. So to that point, were you sponsored? Did you have funding somehow, or was it to raise money?
So every single racer had their own way to kind of get there. I mean, some of them were professional runners that have like huge, social media followings. Like there was one runner from Spain that was basically famous in her own country, and then there's like another runner from Japan that was fully sponsored. There's a really cool guy who was 23 years old who was fully sponsored, and he has just this really cool like social media presence, with his own like personality attached to it. But a lot of folks like myself, we just basically saved for years
Yeah.
to basically do this. This has been on my radar for many years, and yes, it's very expensive So it was all about sort of like setting a little side
Isn't it
pot,
like almost
contributing to
50,000
it
or
each.
something?
What's
The
that,
whole
Tom?
experience, yeah, the
I
whole experience was about 48,000, I think,
Really? Oh my God.
for the experience.
well,
It took
the
me several
planes,
years to save for it.
the chartered planes alone, I mean, those can't be cheap. Not You're not just chartering some little, it's 11-person jet, which still would cost you to fly to another continent, probably, X amount of money, but you're talking about 63 people. So it's a big jet where you can all lay down, and you're chartering basically, 7 jets over the course of this thing. That's probably, and then the gas prices aren't cheap these days either. And then you've got all the people that are involved. You said medics and the whole team that is, and organizers and stuff like that. I mean, it's not.
And you couldn't cash in miles, Couldn't get any upgrades.
Definitely not cash and miles.
Oh,
And there's so
goodness.
many other logistics. I mean, I mean, just sort of like the attention to detail. So, for instance, like when we arrived in Fortaleza, Brazil, we arrived like around 2, 3 in the morning, I believe, if I could recall. But when we got to the buses, so they have like buses that take us to the race, the part of Fortaleza that basically is around the airport actually is relatively like, unsafe. So we had like armed security basically like following the bus to
Wow.
basically sort of take us. And then, of course, they basically block off a whole portion of this beautiful part of the waterfront there. But I mean, just the logistics, the language differences, getting the permitting, that you have 63 runners, like the liability associated with all this. I mean, it really racks up. So it sounds like a lot of money initially, but you kind of think about any sort of like epic excursion, like when you hear about like a guy, for instance, who goes to Mount Everest, he'll easily, spend like over $100,000. And that's not even including like permitting fees and stuff like that. Um, so it can really rack up to fit it all in.
So are you planning on doing anything with this experience, like putting it into a book or any other way of sharing that with the world?
Well, it's been fascinating because like when I did the race, it was a very personal journey. Like there was no intention of sort of like using this as a platform for anything. I think it was really my own. Um, it was my own personal challenge. Maybe it was a way to sort of say I still got it, or this is a way to stretch myself on this capacity. But since the race is completed, like I was actually surprised by the amount of publicity that kind of came out of it, not just for me, but for like a lot of the other runners too. So there's been a lot of folks that have told us, oh, you should like leverage this for,
Yeah.
this, and it has sort of crossed my mind, but like at the same time, that was never really the intent of this thing. Like this was more of like my own
Right.
personal, like
So
meaning.
fucking selfish.
And
You're so fucking selfish. Chris, you're so selfish.
like,
I have a question for you. I mean, I don't know how, if you're a person who remembers your dreams or whatever, because I usually, when I wake up, I can remember several things in my dreams, pretty vividly as they fade out, as the longer you're awake. But I would just be curious, what were those dreams like between the races when you were, the short amount of time you had to sleep? If it was all just, what were you like running in these different places with worse challenges than you had? And then when you got back, were you having dreams like every dream for a week was always about running?
Like a dog and their sleep, chasing a rabbit.
Yeah, your legs are
Legs
moving.
moving.
Kathy's like, dude, you're kicking me.
yeah, well, it's funny. I have no recollection of any dreams like on the plane. And I think because we were just so fundamentally exhausted after each leg that once our head hit the pillow, we were
Yeah.
just like out. I remember on the flight from Cape Town to Perth, I woke up in the middle of the flight just to do like a rest stop break. And walking through the plane, there wasn't a single TV on. There wasn't a single conversation. The plane was just completely silent, completely like lights out. Everyone was completely conked out. So like,
Right.
I've never been on a flight like that where like literally like, it almost feels like everyone's dead on the plane. It's
Yeah.
just like literally everyone is just out. Yeah, but in terms of like when I got back, I think I was on just such a mental high from the experience because like it took over a year of training. It was incredibly grueling, and to have finished it, like I was kind of on cloud nine for a couple weeks, where I just felt like just this immense sense of just kind of peace of mind because it was so much. There was so much anticipation leading up to it that and it took like a year to basically do it all. So to have that project over,
So,
and accomplished, just felt very like peace of mind oriented.
what do you do for work, Chris? I'm sorry, I don't know if we've
Yeah,
talked
so
about that, but how did you fund this? And did you go back to your cubicle afterwards, or like what was that contrast of being out in that life and then having to go back to the everyday grind?
I was previously a digital health entrepreneur, ran a business, scaled it up, and then we ended up exiting the business around 2018, and then from there I was doing some consultative advisory stuff. So I actually had kind of like a bit more flexibility, kind of working as sort of like a self consultant, where it gave me a lot of flexibility. I think it would be really hard to train for this if you're sort of like working a really hardcore professional job. Although there were, physicians that, actually did this race. I mean, there's some pretty hardcore
How about that first?
people.
How about that first job you had after grad school? After your second round of grad school, and this is pretty impressive on its own. But Chris has got a post grad degree from Harvard and Yale. But when you finished at Harvard and you got that job working for that guy that would call you at 4 a.m, imagine having that job when you were working like 17 hours a day.
It would
Yeah,
be impossible. It would be impossible. I mean, I would say even with like a normal 9 to 5, like,
It would be
I
hard.
mean,
Yeah.
it would be insanely hard to do this, and especially if you have kids on top of that. Because I have two, like, I have a 6-year-old and a 2-year-old, and I mean, I don't know how some of these folks did it. Like in fact, one of the elite runners that did this, she has this huge social media presence. She does this for a living, but I think she had like 6 kids, and she still like got like
she had to
first
get
place on the
out.
whole thing.
Like, I gotta get the fuck out of here.
She's still like helping them
I
with
mean, just
homework.
amazing. Like, I mean,
Yeah,
I was just thinking like that's just like
yeah,
I mean, just this insane human achievement, not just winning the whole thing, but juggling 6 kids while doing it is
yeah.
just incredible.
That is
So
incredible.
yeah.
So
Was the
back to Harvard and Yale. What were your degrees in?
Yeah, so I got an MBA over at Yale School of Management, and then I did a kind of health policy-ish master's over at Harvard. It was called a master's in public administration. So I did that from about 2006 to 2010, and then as Tom mentioned, I went into strategy consulting and basically like was just grinding it in the corporate world, working 60 hours plus a week with like cross country travel on a weekly basis. And
All right.
it's
So
being like flying everywhere from SF to Hartford to Cleveland, all over the place, always on a plane for,
Yale,
you know,
Harvard, 7 continents, 7 marathons in 7 days. Clearly, you are an underachiever. When are you going to do something?
Yeah, get
Like,
your life. When do you get your act together,
come on.
Chris? You
You're making
slacker.
me feel really bad about myself, by the way.
no, it's not even, no. Like, I think it's just more subjecting oneself to pain, and I think the World Marathon Challenge is just sort of like, especially now since I'm a bit more flexible in the career, I think there was this desire to want to just do something hard, just kind of push myself to just not sort of hit kind of like this. I guess I don't even know what the word is, but it's always sort of like self-development. I think that's always been kind of a mantra. It's just like, how can I continuously improve?
Which leads
Um,
into the obvious question of what next?
um, that's sort of the big question. I find personally, like, it's always hard. Like, I'm actually very indecisive where it's hard to decide what to do next. But I know that once that thing comes up and sinks into my gut, then it's just like you just go all the way in. So I think right now I'm on that sort of like intermediary phase where, I'm kind of like keeping the
Right.
radar open for that next thing to just like dive
Yeah.
into.
You're
But
like,
it's
"Give me a
all
Yeah.
break. I'm still recovering physically from this. Come on."
But it's
Yeah.
also, how great is it to, having your kids, who, by the way, are adorable as can be, and being able to have, time with your lovely wife, Kathy. But to know that you're not, having some, like when you were first starting out working, that kind of a schedule, and to be able to have the flexibility to, be able to spend time with your family. I mean, that's something that I know so many people who look back on it and say, "Man, I wish I would have spent more time with my kids. I miss my child's first step or their first words because I was working 50, 60 hours a week and maybe not even doing something they enjoy doing, maybe a miserable job. So when they come back, the last thing they want to do is read to their kid. All they want to do is drink.
Yeah. No, yeah, it's such a hard balance because like, when you're sort of in the prime of your life and you're able to do like the experiences that you want to do, oftentimes you're tied into so many obligations and responsibilities. And it's the ever sort of present balance. And then you're sort of juggling what we talked about earlier, which is like as you're getting older, opportunities that seem cool at that age start to either become less desirable or your preferences change or your physical body changes. And I think for me, it was this realization because I missed a lot of years, I think, in between like 20 and 35, because I was working so hard during that time where, I mean, I could still theoretically do some of those crazy experiences I wanted to do when I was younger, but it just wouldn't be as like fun, just going to like youth hostels in Eastern Europe. That would have been amazing, like when I was 25 years old, but now I'm 45 with two kids. So it's just like unrealistic to do that. So yeah, I think there was that sort of sense like, yeah, these opportunities do close as time goes on. You don't really get a second shot to do it. So
Yeah.
let's really kind of hit the gas on these obligations other than work to, make sure that your checklist kind of like you feel good about crossing off the right things on your checklist versus what's like expected of you from,
I'm
other
excited for
people.
my son to listen to this. He's getting ready to graduate from Cal Poly, and he spent
Nice.
his junior
Congratulations.
year. Thank you. Yeah, he spent his junior year abroad and traveled pretty much every weekend. He was in Madrid, and every weekend he was somewhere, whether it was going to Morocco or Oktoberfest or whatever it was. He was gone every single weekend, and now once he graduates, he wants to. I think he's going to spend some time in Australia. That's the plan anyway, and maybe even start in Japan and work his way down, depending on what time of year. And so,
Yeah.
but I think it's great. And whether he's in hostels or uh, I don't know, it won't be the Ritz, that's for sure.
Well, I don't like I don't like
Exactly.
I don't like hostile environments. So, I like to stay at a hotel.
Wah wah.
Wah, wah. Dad joke.
Dad joke.
I had another question for you. Just getting back to the training, you said it was about a year of training. So, did you start just like this week? I'm going to do 3 6 mile runs. The next week I'm going to do 3 7 mile run. I mean, how did that work? And where were you like in the last several weeks before uh, the event? How many miles were you running per day, and how many days a week?
Yeah, well, what was fascinating about this event, I mean, and what makes it really different from like a marathon or even like an Ironman triathlon, is like for those more traditional ultra races, there's just a ton of content online about how to optimize and train for these types of programs because so many people have done them that you can literally just use a playbook that someone else has based on your capability and really just follow that more or less. So it's really just sort of just getting your instruction manual, just follow this instruction manual. It's going to hurt doing it, but just follow this plan and more likely you can probably get through the thing. But for a race of this nature, since only, several hundred people, have ever really done it, I think. I mean, maybe like closer to like 1,000 people like ever since the event started. Um, like there's no playbook online. I mean, there's like little hints of people who've been on kind of on podcasts like this talking about it, but you pretty much had to design your own training plan. So that was actually part of the challenge, was you have this Herculean kind of like finish line goal, but how do I spend the next year getting my body prepared for it? So I had to almost reverse engineer it, where I was thinking like kind of like what you were mentioning, like asking about like, well, how do you recover? How do you sleep? How do you do all this stuff? That actually became like aspects of the recipe for the training plan, like reverse engineering. Like I realized like running a marathon, it's very hard to do, but it's very achievable. So if you break it down, you just need to basically run a marathon each day. So
Oh,
the trick is like,
that's it.
so it's not,
That's it.
yeah, it's not easy, but
Right.
but when you break it down, it's not 183 miles, it's 26 miles, but you got to do that 7 times. So how do you get your body recovered after doing one 26-mile run to be good enough to basically do it the next one, and then be good enough to do it the next one? So the way I designed my training plan was I created kind of this stacking mechanism where I'd run, let's say, 50 miles one week.
Hold on one
Then I
second.
drop.
Someone's at the door.
Oh my
Oh, sure.
God.
Ah!
We are
Yeah.
such professionals here.
Yeah. Should I
Close
continue?
studio
Or,
and yeah.
yeah.
Okay, we
So
don't
like
need
50,
him. Just
so
welcome
like
to
50
the
miles
tea
one
show.
week. Exactly. 50 miles one week, then I'd take a rest week of about 30, then go 55, 35, 60, 40, 65, 45, and just kind of crawl up that ladder. And then I think at its peak, it got up to about 100.
You're talking
And
about
then
per
from there,
week.
there was a taper.
That's per week.
Yeah.
Okay, because I sorry, I had a delivery there, so I had.
Oh, yeah, no worries.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm an important
Think
guy,
about like a fucking
contractor.
sign or something that's like, please, like, do not ring bell or knock on door, put box here.
If do you want to drive to a FedEx all the way out by the airport and say I need to sign for this that I need it today? I mean, no.
Okay, we'll save this for therapy. Let's
Yeah.
stay with Chris. All right. All right. So did you care about your time at all, or was it just okay, I just got to complete the race, or did you have these goals in mind too with, your average time and overall how did you do?
Yeah, I didn't know that either.
Yeah, so I think when I initially started this challenge, like there was no expectation of time. Like I just wanted to complete the race. And that probably lasted for about 70, 80% of the training, where I'm just like, as long as my body, if I could come away from this event still walking and feeling like okay, like that to me is like a big success. Like I didn't want to be just a total train wreck at the end of it,
Yeah.
just destroyed body. Like I actually wanted to like walk away from this thing and, you know, be able to
Yeah.
like, have dinner with friends like the next night. Like that was kind of the goal.
Yeah.
But then like as I got through that training, like that sort of stacking training, about 80% of the way through, I kind of realized like, you know what? I've now gotten to the stage where I can run like 4 or 5 like 20-mile runs in a week. So like my body's like ready for this. And I still have a couple months of training left. So now like, can I sort of dial it in a little bit, where instead of just finishing, I can kind of get down to, a good marathon time, but nothing like exceptional. So something like 4 hours, which is kind of considered like your basic sort of like, I think dividing line between like, sort of like the casual runner and then starting to like get into marathons a bit more. So there was kind of like that target, so between like 4 and 4.5 hours, and if I could kind of keep that consistent across the race, and that was actually about the average that I had for all these races, except for Brazil, which just wrecked me, and I think that was like 5.5 or 5 hours and 15 minutes, because on that race, like, well, one, I got lost, like I went off course
Oh,
on
No.
that one.
So you ran further than you really needed to?
Yeah, because it was on a busy sort of beach boardwalk, and there were these flags that you had to go around. But there was actually a couple other like runs from different like organizations that were happening there, and there's just a lot of foot traffic.
So you went
So
on a different run? Oh my God.
I ran like a mile off
Well,
course.
maybe you did set a world record then, because I know that sometimes the Guinness Book of World Records show up for these things. But if you actually ran more than 7 marathons in 7 days, then maybe you're like by yourself because you ran
What if
those
he like
extra
went it
couple
to like a
miles.
5K or something and there's a finish line? He's like, oh my God, I finished in an hour and a half.
Yeah. Well, this Brazil one was interesting because when I went off course, I could already start to sense that I was not like on course, but it was hard to tell because there's still so many people around. But instantly, like in Brazil, I go from like this really nice beach area to like this really sketchy neighborhood, and I'm just like, I really don't think that this race was intended to go like in this area here where there's just these sketchy individuals everywhere. So like basically just turned right around and went back. But that was only one component. And the second component was I actually tripped on like I think like mile 18 or 19. I was going around and like foot caught like some uneven pavement, just like
Oh
rolled on the
no.
ground. I had like blood on me and everything. And it was just a disaster race on like multiple fronts. But and it was the sixth race, and my body was just wrecked. And I hate the humidity, and it's just like that was actually there was a brief moment where I'm like, man, I don't know if I'm going to finish this thing. I think that was like the one moment. Every other part of the race, I kind of had deep down in my head, I'm going to finish this thing. But that Brazil portion sort of took me to my limit where I was
So
thinking,
the
like,
guards that
man.
you spoke of earlier, they weren't with you on the run,
No, they
keeping you
weren't on
in
the run.
line.
You know what this reminds me of a little bit when we were in San Francisco for Heather, my stepsister, and your sister's wedding, when they had the party there. And I went from a walk and I made a left-hand turn and I ended up in the Tenderloin district. And I was like walking around and it
Yeah.
was just like everyone was sketchy and I had no idea where I was.
Yeah, and Fortaleza has a similar like aspect as like San Francisco, where the neighborhood could just like change,
Right.
just immediately, just cross the street and boom, you're going from like nice area to really sketchy, like
Wow.
block. So yeah, it was pretty wild.
Oh
Totally.
my God. That is
Well,
amazing.
I
This
do
is
have one.
great. I think you should write a book. I would read it.
You're actually like the sixth or seventh person that's actually told me that. Like, it's funny though, because like I think just within the circle of folks, like there hasn't been a lot of people that have done it, but like because I ran with 63 other people that did it, and then this race has been going on for a
Right.
decade.
That's a lot of
I almost
books.
feel like it's a lot of books. So I almost feel like it's not really like unique enough of a
Well, I don't know,
experience.
but you
But
have a unique story with your background and what you've done and 45 and the reason why you've done it. Sometimes it's, those average, stories that just make something great. I mean, when
Right.
we referenced Walter Mitty earlier, he was just basically like this blank piece of paper kind of guy, and not to say that you are, but but he
oh
had to
no,
step
totally,
outside of
totally.
himself to be able to, find the sort of meaning in his life and no longer be afraid and try to do something that was real instead of just staying in a shell and imagining that greatness. I don't know.
It
I
was
probably
funny because
butchered the whole plot of the movie, or the
no,
theme. Yeah.
totally. It was interesting because like after I got back, um, I had the I mean it was really amazing, but like some news stations did some outreach and we were like, hey, you want to share your story on the news? And I think it was that precise reason because I was kind of like, why would this story really be a like an interest story in any way? And I think it's just like this idea that a normal guy with like two kids who's 45, like clearly beyond like elite athlete, phase. I'm like middle-aged man with like two kids just trying to like get them to school each day and stuff like that, could like do this do this type of race. And I really believe anyone can really do it. And it's really mind over matter in many different ways, and time commitment, of course.
Well,
Yeah.
Darren's a producer and has
Yeah.
Darren's produced several movies and documentaries. So if you write a book and want to, give us the book rights, I mean, Darren and I could even turn it into a film. I could,
Yeah, all
I
we
could
we
voice
need
the,
is
I
and
could voice the
provide us
movie
with
trailer.
funding
I could do
too,
the
and
trailer.
we're
Yeah.
set. Provide us with the funding and we're set. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's but it's funny because it's just I went into it to sort of prove to myself I could do the physical challenge, but like I think it was really it became much more of a mental game.
Yeah,
You
Yeah.
know,
for sure.
it was this ability to sort of like break through my own like self beliefs in many ways.
Well,
So like
as I said
yeah.
on my Facebook post after your race, and I updated people during your race, but so proud of you, Chris. I mean, that takes so much, and not only do I think you're amazing, and I'm lucky to have you in my life, but I mean, this is just like something you'll never forget it. I'll never forget it, and I'll never stop telling the story. And we're so glad that you were able to come on and share this on the podcast. I mean, how cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks
So
so much,
great
Tom.
meeting you
Yeah.
finally too. I've heard so
Oh
many
yeah,
great.
it's a great meeting you too. Yeah, no, this has been like a real privilege to be on you guys' podcast,
Thank
and
you.
yeah, it's the experience was pretty surreal, and then it still kind of feels like a dream in a way because it was so much effort to put into it, but it was just a week long, and with all the sleep deprivation, it just like shot by almost like a dream. Where it's almost I'm almost kind of like in disbelief, like did I actually really do that, or did I actually just like imagine it?
Right.
Wait,
Like
did
the only
you?
proof of it.
Yeah. But did you really do it?
Yeah, I mean the only proof is really like the fact that like my ankles like lock up in the morning now still. So
Right.
like it's the only way I could like know that
Right.
I really did
And
it.
the
But
medal, that you got,
and the
Yeah.
medal,
and the
The AI
T-shirt, probably
generated
a
picture of
T-shirt.
you with the medal. Right.
right?
Well,
Yeah.
thank you, Chris, for joining us. And as you probably heard when we were before you. We brought you on screen. I finally sold my house, and you were the person that I called up when I was all stressed out about, buying a house and selling a house. I'm like, I'm calling Chris. He seems to be good at this kind of stuff, challenges, right? So,
Yeah, congratulations, Tom. That's
thank you.
amazing. And I see you got the Indiana representation there, so you're already halfway to Bloomington.
I am, and I hope you guys
Yeah.
come out and visit me.
We will. I've actually always wanted to check out that town. I hear it's a really cool college town. I love college towns.
Aaron grew up there, and
I did.
also went to
Yeah.
college there.
Oh,
So.
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. It seems like a really cool place. The campus looks beautiful in the
It
photos.
is.
So
Well,
love
I'll
to
give
check
you
it
the
out
best
sometime.
tour you ever had when you come out. Chris, thanks for joining us, buddy.
Thanks so
Thanks,
much,
Chris.
guys.
Take care.
Thank you so much. Take care.
So, Darren, how are we going to do our own little challenge? What can we do in 7 days? We couldn't do it on 7 continents. How about in 7 suburbs of Denver in 7 days at 7 different bars, 7 different drinks?
That sounds good. Let's
We could
try
do
it.
that.
No.
It was funny. I was going to tell Chris this, but when the only trophy I have for a race that I won was like a 6K or 10K or whatever it was. But the leader, I saw him. We went down the wrong way, and I was talking to this other runner. I'm like, I gotta go, and I'm like, I saw him go the wrong way, so I turned in and won the race. I still have the trophy for it.
Oh my God, that's great. Yeah, I've done a few races. I actually did a marathon years ago.
You did?
Yeah, the
Where was
Colfax.
this, in LA? Or
No, this was Colfax. This was
you did the
Denver, and then
Colfax
I did
Denver
a half rock and roll. That was horrible finishes. Like I barely made it. Injuries that I'm still recovering from. A decade or so later.
right.
Absolutely horrible. Plantar fasciitis just means I don't even go on walks now, let alone runs.
You need
But
one of those
one quick
rascal.
story really fast. I did I think it was like a 5 or 10K with my daughter when she was, I don't know, it was like 3rd grade or something. It was Girls on the Run, that organization. And I actually passed a kidney stone in the porta potty at Wash Park.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Oh my God, because she was going to be so disappointed if I missed. And I told her I would not miss the race. I was in pain. And she was like banging on that's the way I remember it anyway. Banging. It was like, Dad, what are you doing in there? I'm like,
I'm passing a kidney stone.
Yeah.
That was the most painful thing I ever went through in my life. So I can't.
It was
even imagine.
painful.
Well, Darren,
I
it's
finished.
been fun. Another episode under our belt.
Later,
Later,
dude.
dude.
Tom and D.
Two middle-aged idiots